freezing wind screamed through the trees, ripping the breath right out of my lungs. I fell to my knees in the deep, blinding snow, clutching my swollen belly. Inside me, my unborn baby kicked, fighting for life. Behind me, the massive wooden front door of the family mansion slammed shut. The heavy iron lock clicked into place. My mother-in-law, Meredith, stood behind the frosted glass. She didn't look at me with pity. She looked at me like I was trash she had finally thrown away. "Die out here, Grace," she had whispered right before she pushed me into the blizzard. "You and your bastard child do not belong in our family." I was 8 months pregnant. I had no shoes, no jacket, and no phone. The temperature was dropping fast. They wanted me dead. They thought they had won, but they made one massive mistake. I didn't die that night. I survived, and exactly 1 year later, I walked back through those same iron gates, not as a victim, but as their worst living nightmare. Before I tell you how I took down the most powerful family in the city, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel. Turn on your notifications so you never miss a story of true justice. And right now, pause the video and drop a comment below letting me know where you're watching this video from. I love reading your comments and seeing how far our story travels. Now let's begin. My name is Grace. I never wanted wealth. I grew up in a quiet, modest home with a father who taught me the value of hard work, honesty, and self-respect. When I met Richard, I didn't know his family owned half the real estate in the state. Richard was gentle, attentive, and completely different from the ruthless business tycoons I saw on television. He loved my simplicity. He told me that my warm heart was a sanctuary away from his cold, demanding family. We married in a small, private ceremony. It was the happiest day of my life, but that happiness lasted exactly until the wedding reception. That was the night I truly met Meredith, Richard's mother, and his sister Vivian. Meredith did not look at me like a daughter-in-law. She looked at me like a stain on her expensive silk dress. "You may have trapped my son, Grace," Meredith whispered in my ear during our first formal dinner, "but you will never be a member of this family. You are a peasant, and peasants eventually go back to the mud." Vivian was no better. She was a cruel, spoiled woman who lived to please her mother. Together, they made my life in the estate a living hell. They commanded the servants to ignore my requests. They constantly criticized my manners, my clothing, and my speech. I endured it all because I loved Richard. I believed that as long as my husband stood by my side, I could survive anything. But the real nightmare began the day I discovered I was pregnant. Richard's attitude changed almost overnight. His father's health was failing, and the massive family empire was about to be divided. Meredith and Vivian began whispering in Richard's ear. They convinced him that a wife from a poor background would ruin his social standing when he took over as CEO. They told him that the board of directors would never respect a man married to a nobody. Slowly, Richard grew distant. He stopped looking me in the eye. He started working late, leaving me alone in that massive, freezing mansion with 2 wolves who wanted me gone. The night of January 14th was the coldest night of the winter. A historic blizzard was battering the city. The wind howled against the heavy glass windows of the estate. Richard was away on a business trip in London, or so I thought. I was sitting in the library, holding my heavy, 8-month pregnant belly, when Meredith and Vivian walked in. Meredith held a stack of legal documents in her manicured hands. "Sign these, Grace," Meredith said, throwing the papers onto the table. I looked at the top page. My heart stopped. It was a divorce agreement and a full waiver of parental rights. It stated that I would leave the family immediately, receive 0 financial compensation, and give up all rights to my unborn child the moment it was born. "I won't sign this," I said, my voice trembling but firm. "This is my baby. Richard would never ask for this." Vivian laughed, a harsh, mocking sound. "You poor, stupid girl. Who do you think drafted those papers? Richard wants to move on. He is already seeing someone from our own social class. You are holding him back." "You're lying," I cried, tears spilling down my cheeks. "Let me call Richard." Meredith stepped forward and snatched my phone from my hand. "You won't call anyone. You are leaving this house tonight. It's a blizzard outside." I screamed, standing up and holding my stomach. I am 8 months pregnant. I have nowhere to go. My father passed away last year. Please, Meredith, let me stay until the storm passes, for the sake of your grandchild. Meredith's face twisted with pure hatred. That child carries your common blood. It is no grandchild of mine. Before I could run, Vivian grabbed my arms from behind. She was surprisingly strong. Meredith stepped close and forcefully grabbed my hand, trying to press my thumb onto an ink pad to force a fingerprint signature on the documents. I fought back with everything I had. I kicked, I screamed, and I managed to knock the ink pad to the floor. Meredith raged. If you won't do this the easy way, you will do it the hard way. Throw her out. Vivian dragged me down the long, marble hallway toward the grand entrance. I pleaded, I begged, I cried out for mercy. The servants stood in the shadows, their eyes glued to the floor. They were too terrified of Meredith to help me. Vivian threw open the heavy wooden doors. A blast of freezing air and thick snow hit my face. I was wearing only a thin cotton dress. No shoes. No coat. Please. I screamed, grabbing the doorframe. It's freezing. I'll die. Meredith stepped forward and forcefully pushed me by my shoulders. I lost my footing and tumbled down the grand stone steps, landing hard in the deep snowbank below. The heavy doors slammed shut. The lock clicked. The porch lights went dark. The cold hit me like a physical blow. It felt like thousands of tiny needles piercing my skin. I struggled to stand up, but the snow was already deep, and my bare feet instantly went numb. Help! I screamed at the top of my lungs. Please, someone help me. My voice was swallowed by the roaring wind. The estate sat on a massive, isolated hill, miles away from the main road and any neighbors. I knew that if I stayed by the door, I would freeze to death before morning. Meredith would look out the window tomorrow and smile at my lifeless body. I had to move. For my baby, I had to survive. I began to walk down the long, winding driveway. Every step felt like walking on broken glass. I couldn't feel my toes. My hands were locked in tight fists against my chest, trying to keep my belly warm. The snow was falling so fast I could barely see 2 feet in front of me. I stumbled and fell. I dragged myself up. I fell again. My breathing became shallow. My vision started to blur. The dark silhouettes of the pine trees danced in front of my eyes. My body was shutting down. I knew the signs of severe hypothermia. First comes the intense shivering, then comes the numbness, and finally, a strange, deadly warmth. I felt that warmth creeping over me. I wanted to lie down in the soft white snow and just go to sleep. No, I whispered to myself. Wake up, Grace. Move. Suddenly, a sharp, blinding pain shot through my abdomen. I gasped and fell to my knees, screaming into the wind. It wasn't just the cold. It was a contraction. The extreme physical trauma and the freezing temperature had thrown my body into premature labor. I lay in the snow, completely paralyzed by the pain. I couldn't get up. This was the end. I closed my eyes and prayed for my baby's soul. Through the roaring wind, I heard a faint, rumbling sound. Bright white lights cut through the darkness, blinding me. I thought I was seeing angels. I thought I was dying. The sound grew louder. It was an engine. A heavy-duty snowplow was clearing the remote mountain road near the edge of the property. The driver, an elderly man named George, saw a dark shape in the snow. He stopped his massive truck, grabbed a flashlight, and stepped out. When his light hit my frozen, pale face, he gasped. "Oh my God!" George yelled, running toward me. He lifted my freezing body into his arms. He carried me into the warm cabin of his truck, wrapping me in his own heavy wool jacket and blankets. He didn't ask questions. He put the truck into gear and raced toward the nearest county hospital, blasting the heater at full power. When I woke up, the smell of antiseptic hit my nose. The steady beep of a heart monitor filled the warm room. I bolted upright, panic surging through my veins. "My baby!" I screamed. A kind, elderly nurse rushed to my side. "Calm down, sweetheart. You are safe. Your baby is safe." She pointed to a small incubator next to my bed. Inside lay a tiny, fragile little girl. She was small, born a month early, but she was breathing on her own. She was a fighter, just like her mother. I named her Joy, because she was the only reason I was still breathing. The doctor told me it was a miracle. I had severe frostbite on my feet, but thanks to George finding me when he did, there was no permanent tissue damage. The thick snow bank had actually shielded me from the direct, killing force of the wind for just a few critical minutes. While I recovered, George visited me every day. He was a lonely widower who had lost his own daughter years ago. When I told him my story, what my in-laws had done to me, his face turned red with anger. "They are monsters," George said, his hand shaking. "They think their money makes them gods, but money cannot protect them from the truth." George introduced me to a woman named Martha. Martha was a retired high-profile attorney who had spent her career fighting corporate corruption. She had no love for the wealthy family, who had used dirty legal tricks to destroy small businesses in the city for decades. When Martha heard my story, her eyes turned sharp and cold. "Grace," Martha said, sitting on the edge of my hospital bed, "we can go to the police right now. We can file charges for attempted murder and domestic abuse. But Meredith has the best lawyers money can buy. She will claim you walked out on your own. She will say you are crazy, a bitter ex-wife looking for money. The case will drag on for years, and they will use their power to crush you." "Then what do I do?" I asked, looking at my beautiful baby girl. "I want justice. I want them to pay for what they did to my daughter." Martha smiled, a slow, dangerous smile. "We don't just cut the branches of a rotten tree, Grace. We pull out by its roots. We play the long game. You are going to disappear. Let them believe you died in that storm. Let them think they got away with it. And while they are celebrating their victory, we are going to build an army." For the next 12 months, Grace ceased to exist. George allowed me and Joy to live in his modest farmhouse out in the countryside. Martha went to work in secret. She began to dig deep into the family empire's financial records. What she found was a goldmine of corruption. The family wasn't just wealthy. They were a house of cards built on illegal offshore accounts, tax evasion, and massive corporate fraud. Meredith had been bribing city officials for years to approve construction projects on unsafe land. More importantly, Martha discovered a secret that Meredith had hidden from everyone, including her own son. The old patriarch of the family had passed away just 2 weeks after I was thrown out. In his final, valid will, which he had written in secret before his mind failed him, he left 60% of the entire family empire, not to Meredith, and not to Richard. He left it to Richard's firstborn child. The old man had always despised his wife's cruelty and his daughter's greed. He wanted the legacy to go to the next generation, hoping they would be better people. Meredith had found this will and hidden it. She had forged a new one that left everything to her and Richard. If anyone ever discovered the original will, and if anyone ever proved that Richard had a child, Meredith's entire world would shatter. She would lose the money, the power, and her freedom. "This is our weapon," Martha told me, placing the certified copy of the original will on my table. "But we need a grand stage to reveal it. We need a place where she cannot hide, where the media will see everything." That opportunity arrived exactly 1 year after that horrific night in the snow. The family empire was celebrating its 50-year anniversary. Meredith was hosting a massive, televised charity gala at the Grand Downtown Hotel. The city's elite, the governors, the business leaders, and every major news outlet would be in that room. Richard was set to be officially announced as the new global CEO. "Are you ready, Grace?" George asked me the night before the gala. He looked at me with pride. Over the past year, I had changed. I was no longer the quiet, timid girl who shrank under Meredith's cold glare. I had spent every day working, studying, and preparing. I had learned how to speak with authority. I had learned the ins and outs of their business. I looked in the mirror and saw a woman of iron. "I've been ready for a year, George," I said quietly. "It's time to pay my in-laws a visit." The grand ballroom of the Grand Regent Hotel was spectacular. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting a golden glow over hundreds of guests dressed in tuxedos and designer gowns. Meredith stood at the center of the room, sipping champagne. She wore a diamond necklace that cost more than a normal person earned in a lifetime. She smiled, basking in the compliments of the city's high society. Beside her stood Vivian, laughing loudly, and Richard, looking handsome but pale and tired. His eyes were hollow, devoid of any real joy. "Ladies and gentlemen," the announcer's voice boomed through the speakers. "Please welcome the matriarch of the Empire, Mrs. Meredith." The crowd applauded loudly as Meredith stepped up onto the raised stage, walking toward the microphone. "Thank you," Meredith said, her voice smooth and dripping with false elegance. 50 years ago, my late husband built this company on the foundations of honor, family values, and integrity. Tonight, as we look to the future, I am proud to announce the new leader of our legacy, my son, Richard. Richard stepped forward, plastering a fake smile on his face. He reached out to take the microphone from his mother. "Stop this farce immediately." The voice wasn't loud, but it was clear, sharp, and carried an undeniable authority. It came from the back of the ballroom. The crowd went completely silent. Hundreds of heads turned toward the main entrance doors. The heavy doors opened wide. I walked into the room. I was wearing a stunning, custom-made midnight black gown. My hair was styled perfectly, and my posture was straight and regal. I didn't look like a victim. I looked like a queen entering her courtroom. Beside me walked Martha, holding a thick leather briefcase, and George, dressed in a sharp suit. And in my arms, I held a beautiful, healthy 1-year-old baby girl with bright blue eyes. The silence in the room was deafening. You could hear a pin drop. Meredith's champagne glass slipped from her hand. It shattered on the stage floor, the sharp sound echoing through the microphone. Her face drained of all color. Her lips trembled. She looked like she was looking at a ghost. "Grace," Richard whispered, his eyes wide with utter shock. He took a step forward, his hand shaking. You're alive." "No thanks to your mother and sister, Richard," I said, my voice echoing clearly through the silent ballroom. Vivian pointed shaking finger at me. "Security. Throw this woman out. She is a trespasser. She is insane." "I wouldn't do that if I were you, Vivian," Martha spoke up, stepping forward and flashing her high-profile legal identification to the security guards who were hesitating. "My name is Martha, Senior Counsel, and we are not here to disrupt. We are here to execute the true, legally binding will of Richard's father." The reporters in the front row instantly perked up. Flashbulbs began to go off like fireflies. The television cameras, which were broadcasting the event live to the entire city, zoomed in on my face. Meredith tried to regain her composure. She stepped to the edge of the stage, her eyes burning with hatred. "This is an outrage. My husband's will was settled a year ago. This woman is a fraud, a gold digger who abandoned my son and disappeared." "Is that the story you told Richard?" I asked, walking down the center aisle. The crowd parted from me like the Red Sea. I stopped right at the foot of the stage, looking up at the woman who had tried to kill me. "Tell them the truth, Meredith," I said, my voice rising so everyone could hear. "Tell them about the night of January 14th. Tell them how you and Vivian cornered a pregnant woman in your library. Tell them how you tried to force my signature, and when I refused, how you dragged me out into a historic blizzard. Tell them how you locked the doors and left me to die in the snow." A collective gasp rippled through the ballroom. The guests began to whisper furiously. "That's a lie," Vivian screamed, her face twisting into the same ugly expression she wore that night. "You have no proof." "Actually, we do," Martha said, opening her briefcase. She didn't pull out papers. She pulled out a small digital tablet and connected it to the ballroom's massive presentation screens, which were meant to show a video of the company's history. Instead, video played. It was security footage. When Meredith had ordered the servants to delete the security tapes from that night, she forgot one thing. The estate security system had a secondary, automated cloud backup managed by an outside firm. Martha had obtained it with the federal subpoena. The massive screens showed the entire scene. The ballroom watched in absolute horror as the video showed Vivian dragging me down the hall. It showed me crying, clutching my stomach. It showed Meredith violently pushing me down the stone steps into the dark, blinding snow. It showed them slamming the door and turning off the lights. The crowd went wild. People were shouting in disgust. Reporters were shouting questions. Richard turned to his mother, his face completely pale. "You told me she left me for someone else. You told me she packed her bags and walked out. Mother, what did you do?" "Richard, she's lying. The video is edited." Meredith stammered, backing away. But she knew it was over. The evidence was undeniable. "But we aren't done yet," I said, holding Joy up high so the cameras could see her. "This is Joy. She was born that very night in a county hospital after a kind man saved my life. She is Richard's daughter. She is the firstborn grandchild of his father." Martha stepped onto the stage, handing a document directly to Richard. "This is the original, certified will of your father. It was uncovered from a private safe deposit box your mother tried to destroy. As you can see, 60% of all family assets, shares, and real estate are legally owned by Grace's daughter. Your mother has been running this company illegally for 12 months. Richard looked at the document, then looked down at his mother. The betrayal in his eyes was absolute. "You stole from my father. You tried to kill my child." The doors at the back of the ballroom opened once more. This time it wasn't a ghost. It was the police. 4 uniformed officers and 2 detectives walked down the aisle. They walked straight up onto the stage. "Meredith, Vivian," the lead detective said, pulling out 2 pairs of steel handcuffs. "You are under arrest for attempted murder, domestic abuse, corporate fraud, and grand larceny." Vivian began to scream and cry, hiding behind her mother. Meredith didn't scream. She stood completely still, her cold, arrogant mask finally shattering into 1,000 pieces. As the handcuffs clicked around her manicured wrists, she looked down at me. "You ruined us," Meredith hissed, her voice trembling with venom. "No, Meredith," I said quietly, looking her dead in the eye. "You ruined yourself. I just let the world watch." The police dragged Meredith and Vivian out of the ballroom in front of every major news camera in the state. The crowd watched in stunned silence as the 2 most powerful women in the city were led away in chains. Richard stepped down from the stage. He approached me, his eyes filled with tears. He looked at the beautiful baby girl in my arms. He reached out a trembling hand to touch her cheek. "Grace, please," Richard sobbed. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know what they did. I was stupid, I was weak. Please let me make this right. Let us be a family again. I still love you." I looked at Richard. I looked at the man I had once loved with all my heart. But I didn't feel anger anymore. I didn't feel sadness. I felt absolutely nothing. The man I loved had died the moment he allowed his family to turn him against his pregnant wife. I stepped back, pulling Joy away from his hand. "There is no us anymore, Richard," I said, my voice cold as ice. "You were weak when I needed you to be strong. You listened to their lies because it was easier than fighting for your wife. You can see your daughter through the court-appointed visitation hours. But as the legal guardian of the majority shareholder of this empire, your employment as CEO is officially terminated. You have 24 hours to clear your desk." Richard collapsed to his knees on the polished floor, burying his face in his hands, weeping openly as the crowd watched. I turned around, holding my daughter tight against my chest. George and Martha walked beside me as we headed toward the exit. As I walked out of that ballroom into the crisp, cool night air, I looked up at the stars. The snow was falling gently now, soft and beautiful, no longer a weapon meant to destroy me. I had entered that city as a frightened, broken girl thrown out into the cold. I left it as a mother who had protected her child, taken down an empire of corruption, and reclaimed her life. Justice had been served, and my daughter would never, ever have to fear the cold again. Thank you for watching this full story until the very end. If you loved seeing justice prevail, please hit that like button right now. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share this video with your friends and family. It helps us bring more incredible stories of truth and triumph to light. See you in the next story.